The NBA offseason will be an interesting one, more interesting than we get most years. And the predominant reason for that is going to be the intrigue surrounding what's going to happen with the Miami Heat and LeBron James and Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh. Now that all three have opted out of their contracts, let the speculation and let stupid season begin. So what I wanted to do in this video was take a quick look at Chris Bosh and Dwyane Wade and LeBron James, maybe examine what situation is best for them, look at the Miami Heat as an organization, and ultimately determine whether LeBron, Wade, and Bosh should stay put in Miami or if it's time to blow it up and go elsewhere. I'll start off with Chris Bosh. This is an interesting time for Bosh. He's about 30 years old, so he's still got a few years of peak play left in his career, but he knows that he's not the youngest chicken in the coop and that he's had a lot of NBA mileage on his body already accumulate. Well, you look at his situation. He can get paid the most by the Miami Heat because of the Larry Bird rule. I also think that his best shot at winning an NBA championship is also in Miami with the Heat because he could be there as a number 2 or number 3 option. He doesn't have to shoulder the burden. He doesn't have to be that guy. And in no way, shape, or form is his current state of game in a place where he needs to or is justifiable to be the top guy. And when you look at it, what other viable options are there out there? I've seen Rick Bucher and a few other people talk about potentially a sign and trade with him going to Toronto. So if you're going to get paid that money that you would get for staying with the Heat to go to Toronto, why would you not just stay with the Heat and have a better shot at winning an NBA championship or several NBA championships? If a Chris Bosh really wanted to go to a Toronto, then what does that say about him? You could say, well, that's where he started off his career. But yeah, that was several years ago now. He hasn't played there for over 4 seasons. You move on from that stuff at some point, and it's not like Toronto was his home to begin with. You would think I could get paid this money to potentially win a championship every year, or I can get paid this money to be the number 1 option on a team that'll never win an NBA championship, which sounds like the more appealing option. I think most everyone agrees, and I definitely do, that the most likely to stay in Miami no matter what happens is Dwyane Wade. This is a guy that really was an organization changer for the Miami Heat when they took him 5th overall in 2003. We remember what he did in the 2006 NBA Finals. He really put that team on his back to beat the Dallas Mavericks and win the championship that year. He's the primary reason that a Chris Bosh and a LeBron James thought about taking their talents to South Beach to play along with them for the Miami Heat. When you look at Wade, too, at the stage of the career that he's in, he's 32 years old, I believe. His body is starting to break down. He's definitely not the player that he once was, and it's not going to get any better. He's only going to decline more as the years go by. He could still get paid the most by staying with the Miami Heat. I think, frankly, because of the state of his game, his best chance of winning an NBA championship is with the Miami Heat as a number 2 or even at this point in time a number 3 option. Because if he goes somewhere else, he might be expected to be the old Flash, Dwyane Wade, and be the number 1 option, and that would be an unmitigated disaster for all involved. Now, the key piece of key pieces obviously is going to be King James, the best player in the NBA, LeBron James. And you look at it from his standpoint, this is a very important decision for him this offseason. You're talking about the best player in the game, still in the peak of his career at like 29 years of age. He wants to make sure that the remaining portion of his peak years of his career, let's say the next 3 to 4 years, are going to be spent in the right place where he can be taken care of very well financially and also have the opportunity to win more NBA championships and help cement his legacy in the annals of NBA history. And when you look at this situation from a LeBron James standpoint, there are options out there. How viable are those options? He goes to a Houston or a Chicago or a Cleveland. Is that really that much of an upgrade over the Miami Heat? I don't know about that. You could sit there and say that LeBron James going to another organization is a franchise changer and makes them much more of a championship contender than as opposed to bringing in a Carmelo Anthony. And there's no question that is the case. But is Cleveland really viable? Would he really want to go back there? Because I look at it and I see LeBron James as being comfortable with the situation and comfortable with the organization. I think he has a tremendous amount of respect for Pat Riley. I think his respect for Eric Spoelstra, the head coach, has grown. I think he's comfortable with the fact that he gets to be in the South Beach area, that he likes the fact that he can play in the NBA, be the biggest star, get the most endorsements, have the most media attention, but he also plays in a sports city that isn't going to put the pressure on him in Miami that a New York, a Chicago, or an LA, or even playing back in his home state of Ohio in the Cleveland area would bring to him. He also, frankly, wants to get paid like the best player in the NBA. He wants to get paid the most he possibly can, and I can't blame him. It's not his responsibility at this point, based off of his resume and his accomplishments, to take a pay cut to help the Miami Heat. They need to figure out how to make it work around him. I can't blame him. I do the same thing. Get paid as much as you possibly can, and the Heat can pay him the most. But the other question is for LeBron, how much of the burden is he going to want to shoulder going forward? Because the last couple of seasons, he had to take on an increasing amount of the burden for carrying the Miami Heat. And you especially saw that this season, in particular in the playoffs. And when it got to the point of the NBA Finals, LeBron was pooped, I think. He was tired, which led to him, frankly, mentally caving and conceding a little bit because he was worn out. And he has to wonder, staying there with the Chris Bosh, who's already like 30 years old, and his game's not going to get any better, and a Dwyane Wade, who's 32 already, and his game is seriously in decline. If the Miami Heat don't bring in a lot of pieces and a lot of young depth to reinforce the roster, LeBron James is going to wonder, how much of this burden am I going to have to shoulder? Do I really want to be playing at this level with this much pressure and this much responsibility 2, 3, 4 years down the road? For all three players, Wade, Bosh, LeBron, you have to look at the Miami Heat as an organization during their 4 years there. They've made it to 4 straight NBA Finals. They've won 2 NBA championships in that time. They still, even in the way they would be currently constructed, because of the weakness of the Eastern Conference and the organization's willingness under Pat Riley to spend and make moves to improve the roster, you have to factor in that you can get paid a lot of money and still have a 3 to 4 year window potentially, which is what you'd be looking for in a contract to potentially contend for NBA championships. So it is very appealing based off of what you've already done and what you still could possibly do. When it comes down to it, I think the best option for LeBron, Wade, and Bosh is to stay put in Miami. From Bosh's standpoint, you can get paid the most there. And what, you really want to go to Toronto or somewhere else where you're going to be the number one guy? People are going to realize you're not a number one guy, where you can play in Miami, be the 2 or 3 guy, and be a part of a championship team for years to come. Wade, you've been there since 2003. Why rock the boat now? You go somewhere else, they're going to expect more out of you than should be realistically expected. You can get paid the most by staying with the Miami Heat. You're familiar with the organization. You're obviously comfortable with the organization. Again, why rock the boat? From LeBron's standpoint, maybe you can make a little bit more of an argument for him potentially leaving. But again, you're talking about a team that your 4 years there has been to the NBA Finals every single year. You've won 2 NBA championships in that span. You've got a guy in Pat Riley running the show that obviously has a willingness to improve, a willingness to spend, an owner that is willing to go well into luxury tax territory in order to ensure that you have the ability to win an NBA championship. The Heat can pay you the most. You like the situation, and you're talking about protecting a legacy here. What happens to LeBron's legacy if he goes from Cleveland and then he goes to Miami, and then all of a sudden it seems like, well, the best option is to go to Houston or Chicago or Cleveland, because that's going to be the best, and then you hop ship and you go there and you win a couple titles. People are always going to be, knocking you for that. People are always going to be questioning you for that. You've already made the move to Miami, and at this point in time, I just can't see where making the move out of Miami is justifiable or really makes any sense, because especially even if there weren't a lot of improvements made and you just brought back Bosh and Wade and had a bunch of scrubs, the Eastern Conference still is boo-boo. The Eastern Conference is still very weak, so the chance of making it back to the NBA Finals next year if you're the Miami Heat is pretty damn good and pretty damn solid. And if there are some key improvements made to the organization in the roster, you're talking about still a 3 to 4 year window of potentially contending for NBA championships.